Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy Election Day. And welcome to Green Chat. I am Stephanie Bluchacki. This is Christy Medeiros, and we're joined remotely by Erica Pukic from our New Jersey area. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining me here today. This is a pretty exciting day.
It is. I'm excited to be here.
Christy, I see you have your sticker. You're donning your sticker, your I voted sticker. It's like a badge of honor. Absolutely badge of honor. Today, of course, I want to open up and just make legal happy and make sure everyone is aware that we are not making any claims. We're not expressing any opinions, nor are we encouraging you to vote in any specific way. We are encouraging you to vote, definitely, but we're not here to tell you who you should vote for. We're actually more talking about some exciting news as it relates to Election Day surrounding the legalization of cannabis, both medicinally as well as recreationally. So here in Massachusetts, we underwent the legalization of cannabis back in 2016, and certainly there were some implications based on that. And now as New Jersey is looking at that same vote today, we thought it would be interesting to discuss what that picture looks like. If you're currently a medical cannabis patient, perhaps you're thinking, you know what, if legalization happens, I don't need to be a patient anymore. So we'll touch upon some of those things for sure. But I want to go back to the voting. Again, definitely urging you to go out there and vote. Voting is a privilege and a right guaranteed to all Americans. Millions of individuals around the world actually don't even get a say in who their leaders are. They don't get a say. It happens. You don't get a voice. You don't get an opinion. You don't get a vote. We here in the United States, we do. So using your vote means you're deciding to exercise your democratic freedoms. And lots of people fought to make sure that you have those freedoms. So what's absolutely cooler than that? On a day like today, not a whole lot, that's for sure. So when you go out there and vote, wear your I voted sticker proudly. Feel free to post a picture of yourself with your I voted sticker on our CannaCare Docs Facebook pages. We'd love to see the thumbs up that you voted today. Go out and do it. It's your right to do so. So today, huge day on the election front. Certainly, who are we voting for? We're voting for the next president. Who is going to be the next president? Certainly, will the incumbent be reelected, or will there be a turnover of who our president would be? So certainly, we hope to find out at the end of the day who that will be. Again, talked about drug legalization in 6 states. We'll get into that more specifically, but six states do have some initiatives on the ballot today. Again, just some other seats, 33 U.S. Senate seats, all 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, 11 state governors, thousands of state senators, representatives, local city council races. You're going to be in that voting booth for a while, folks, because there's a lot of decisions that you have to make. And hopefully you've taken the time ahead of time to learn about the various candidates, what they stand for, how they impact your own personal life, and how they'll influence and improve, of course, the overall country, I guess you could say. So you have an opportunity to change the course of U.S. politics and policies for years to come. So definitely go out and exercise that vote. So what states have drug legalization of any kind in their ballots? So Arizona has a recreational vote, a recreational cannabis vote. Montana, same, recreational cannabis. Mississippi is looking to introduce a medical cannabis program. That's really great for potential patients there. New Jersey, which is, we have Erica here representing New Jersey, so we'll get into a bigger discussion about New Jersey in just a bit. Oregon is looking to legalize the medical use of psilocybin and decriminalization of all drugs. So that's a really interesting one to keep your eye on, because that could potentially set the stage for future states, just as it had with cannabis. It seemed that when you saw different states go through their programs, other states kind of kept a watchful eye as to what happened and how it impacted the states, and they oftentimes followed suit. And then lastly, South Dakota has a medical and recreational vote on the line. So what happens if these laws are passed? And this is really the meat and potatoes of what we're going to get into today. So Christy, of course, is having gone through the recreational vote in Massachusetts and has seen the impacts on the medical program and what the adult use program has done. She'll talk about that, and certainly Erica will get into what New Jersey is looking like if in fact that vote does pass. So what happens initially? If these votes are passed, what happens? Well, frankly, not a whole lot initially, not a whole lot. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly there'll be in New Jersey a number of recreational dispensaries open and you can suddenly go legally purchase cannabis at one of these retail outlets. That's just not the picture. That's not the picture in any state that's come prior to New Jersey, for example, and it's certainly not going to be the case here. Once the ballot measure is approved by the voters, it actually takes time. There are rules and regulations and policies that have to be developed in order to ensure that the program is in fact successful and is able to be monitored for its safety, its fairness, and whatnot. So the state will then discuss beginning accepting applications for growers, for dispensaries. Of course, they have to build the facilities to grow cannabis, because certainly you don't want to grow cannabis in a state that you don't necessarily know is going to have a program the day after election. So that's kind of the green light if it in fact is passed. So again, you won't be able to walk into a dispensary tomorrow if in fact it's legalized in your state. And in fact, it could take years, as it did in Massachusetts. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Christy?
So we did pass it in 2016, but it did take a couple of years before we seen any adult use dispensaries opening in the state. So again, like Stephanie said, it doesn't just, you vote on it tomorrow, you can go purchase. You might vote on it today and it could take a year, 2 years, 3 years before you can actually go and purchase in these adult use dispensaries. Again, the policies and procedures need to be written. You need to get licensing. So it's very important that you do vote for it. But again, there is a little bit of a time before we're actually able to see these laws go into effect. So in Massachusetts, again, it's 2016 we voted. 2018 was one of the first adult use dispensaries that opened in Massachusetts.
2 years. Yes.
2 years, a full 2 years. It was fall of 2018, I do believe. And that we do have 60 plus dispensaries now in the dispensary, but it did take that 2 years before we were able to go in and purchase adult use. And as you know, with everything going on in today's day and age, starting today, 9:30, your adult use shops will now have to close in the state of Massachusetts.
So that's because of the COVID restrictions.
That is because of COVID restrictions, and this is what they can do. So the importance of going and voting and getting your vote out there is very important. It will take a little bit of a time to get these laws into effect, but you definitely should go out there and get these votes in.
It's important to note also that this previous spring, at the start of COVID here in Massachusetts, adult use dispensaries were actually shut down. So even though the legalization had happened, the governor had determined that as a result of COVID, that the decision was made. I'm sure there were a number of reasons that went into that decision. The adult use dispensaries were shut down for some time, and only medical cannabis patients were able to access through a dispensary. So that's a very unique distinction between a medical program and an adult use program, just Definitely. As an aside there.
Definitely.
All right, let's see. I'm going to talk about Maine a little bit as well. So Maine, our neighbor to the north here in Massachusetts, the citizens voted again in 2016, but recreational dispensaries didn't actually even open until just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So the beginning of October this year. So that was 4 years later. 4 years later that dispensaries actually were able to open and be able to allow people to walk in and purchase cannabis at the adult use level, the recreational level.
With that being said, though, they opened up cannabis shops and there was no cannabis to be able to be purchased. So again, even though it was able and open, it didn't have product to be given and sold to these people who are looking for adult use. Another good reason to have your medical card.
That's right. So Erica, we'd love to hear from you. What's the good word on the front in New Jersey? What are people thinking? What are they saying? Are there some misnomers that perhaps if adult use is voted in, that the landscape changes? What are people saying there?
Yeah, so there's tons of articles that are coming out in support of or against voting for the legalization of adult use in New Jersey. And I think the biggest myth that we need to basically dispel in New Jersey is the fact that immediate availability. When in fact, at this current moment, states across the country are actually having issues with supply and demand just with the medical. So one thing that I really appreciate about New Jersey's medical marijuana program is the commissioner, Jeff Brown, has come out and basically said that until we can satisfactorily serve our medical patients, there is not going to be adult use. So he's made it very clear that patients are priority. So, I mean, hats off to him for that, because typically when we see these discussions happening in Delaware, in Pennsylvania, there's no real emphasis on patients first. So I very much appreciate that Jeff has made big strides on making that in several articles a priority. So even within your legislation, your senators, your House of Reps, they are also unfamiliar with the supply and demand issues that patients are dealing with. And I think that a lot of time legislators underestimate the popularity that cannabis will bring. So highlighting these states that have already went through this transition and the difficulties that patients had to experience there, I think will be a big lesson for all of these states that intend to go this route. So there's questions that I have for the Massachusetts market. When you guys implemented some of the things that you guys had to go through, patients are under this impression that, oh, when it goes adult use, I'm just going to be able to walk in, it's going to be quick. But I just don't think that that's going to be the case in New Jersey, especially since there's only 12 dispensaries at the moment. And New Jersey is a very large state, and to adequately serve not only the medical patients that are in the program, but New Jersey is also going to serve as a domino effect for all of the other surrounding states. So if New Jersey goes legal, you're going to have Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New York coming into New Jersey to buy product as well, because it's going to be legal there. So not only will it influence the other states to progress, but we're also going to see New Jersey's medicine for patients, that supply will be depleted by adult use consumers. And again, this is something that Jeff Brown has made absolutely certain and clear that he will not be allowing. So it is very important for New Jersey patients to recognize that this is not going to be an overnight change. There are some proposed regulations for the implementation of adult use, but these have not been agreed on between the Senate and the House yet. So there's still a lot of back and forth and some agreements and compromises to be made. And that could literally take, like you guys are saying, years to in fact implement. So it's just been kind of my mission in New Jersey, that with patients, that me and our staff, that we're emphasizing to patients that this isn't going to be overnight. And even when it does go, there's going to be prioritized access for patients. And that typically, and I know Christy, you'll be able to speak to this, but some of the things that a patient would be able to the dispensaries closing down during COVID for adult use, but not for patients. So it's always important that if you are a patient, to keep your card, and in New Jersey, your certification, because there's 2 different expiration dates, to keep those active, because worst case scenario, yes, even if it did go legal the next day, so November 4th, here we go, we have adult use. As a patient, you are going to be prioritized, and the medical marijuana program, like I said, headed by Jeff Brown, has made it very clear that that is the intention. So it's definitely not going to be overnight. It's definitely, there's a lot of supply that needs to be met before the demand of adult use is introduced. So speaking of all of that, Christy, when you guys went recreational or adult use, what kind of wait times were recreational versus medical dealing with as they went to the dispensary to pick up medicine?
When we first started and we opened, there was huge lines, hours. People were out there hours. And like you say, prioritize. So medical patients don't have to wait in those lines. They have a specific area for medical patients. But I can go down the street right now and guaranteed there's an hour line at our local dispensary right now. There's always a line outside. And again, like you said, supply and demand. They're not getting what the patients are allowed to purchase. They're, paying extreme taxes on this, and they're waiting in line for 2 hours to do it. So just that.
So the dispensaries in Massachusetts, they have set aside a certain percentage of inventory that's reserved for patients. So once they hit, below a certain amount, no adult use sales will be made then.
Correct. 35% of all product has to be put aside for medical patients. So if adult use dispensary goes through their supply, there's 35% that's still waiting for those medical patients. And like I said, there's separate lines for medical patients. There's separate rooms for consultations for medical patients, as opposed to a recreational adult use standing in line and just asking questions to a bud tender.
Right. So there's just like a lot more individual attention to patients as well, which is something I didn't think about either. Even like the seasoned cannabis consumer, if they have a medical condition, should be concerned about different effects for their medical condition, and having the ability to discuss that with somebody versus standing in a line and just picking, whatever's upsell to them.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, these are all really great things for New Jersey patients to consider. So I appreciate you shedding some light on this. So one of the other things that adult use patients versus medical is the cost. And you did touch on that. So what sort of cost difference, how long have you guys had adult use? Has it been like a year or?
It's been 2 years that we had adult use. And they can actually do 20% state, 20% local tax. So it depends on, what products you're buying. For example, I buy a vape product with a cartridge that's costing me $65 to $85. Adult use, it's going to probably be about $100 to $125. So they're paying $15+ on tax, adult use.
That's substantial.
That's huge.
Yeah, and medical patients, they're not just dealing with, they're dealing with medical issues. So they have bills on top of that for their medical conditions that they need to consider and keeping costs low. So it's always an advantage to keep the card for cost too. And it looks like, 2 years in, you guys are still, the cost is definitely significantly lower than an adult use, but you would expect that even further into the program, adult use might stay the same, whereas medical can continue to lower that cost.
Correct. Medical patients also have that access to specials and loyalty points. I know every time I go into a dispensary, each day there's something. So it's a Tincture Tuesday or Wacky Wednesday. So again, these are specials and deals that adult use patients are not offered.
Oh, I didn't know that either. That's awesome. Okay, so as I'm educating and as our staff is educating patients about the benefits of keeping their medical card, I mean, we've gone over cost, we've gone over access, we've gone over prioritized inventory, we've gone over individual attention for these patients. Beyond all of that, what would be your best advice for a New Jersey patient who's anticipating this potential change?
Well, considering we also have the option of purchasing more than an adult use person. So depending on how you're using your medication, and like you stated before, they're purchasing this as for medical purposes. They're also purchasing their other pharma products. So they're spending a lot of money on medications all around. So to have a better quality medication in cannabis is more important than going and buying it adult use.
That's right. Very interesting because New Jersey already, it is actually of the states that I operate, it probably the most restrictive when it comes to the ability to purchase because they can only purchase 3 ounces a month. So for a cancer patient who needs to maybe make their own edibles or RSO or something like that, because the dispensaries don't typically provide the variety in New Jersey that the other states do at the moment, which is, again, another concern when it comes to adult use is, there's only a certain amount of products or different, consumption methods available. Adult use is going to come into this market and they're going to be, basically buying up all of these different products that patients might need, like the lotions and the capsules and things that are available. So yeah, I definitely appreciate your insight, Christy, because this is very important as these states. And like I said, with New Jersey, they're going to create, well, at least what the media is telling us, a domino effect. I mean, you can already see Delaware and Pennsylvania are starting to gear up for the consideration of adult use as well. And in New Jersey goes, we're all going to be flooding over there and buying up medicine that is meant for legitimate medical concerns. So I appreciate your insight on this.
I would also suggest that, you would ask, what can we suggest to our folks in New Jersey? And that's, don't put the cart before the horse. Okay, take a moment, take a step back. If in fact adult use is voted in, if you are in fact a medical patient, stay a medical patient. Keep that, because I want you to keep a close eye on what's happening around you. Some of the concerns that were raised here on this segment today, certainly about access and quantity and availability of products, certainly. So if in fact you are utilizing cannabis for medicinal purposes, don't be so quick to just give up that card and assume that you now have carte blanche access in the recreational and adult use word. Again, if in fact recreational is voted in, that's really the starting point for this whole process. It's the green light to now begin all of the things that have to happen to put together an appropriate adult use program in the state. And obviously Erica's mentioned a lot of the background work that's being discussed. So if you are a medical patient, again, keep your medical card. It's very important that you continue your access to your medicine. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you don't have the ability to access medicine. And then of course, just keep a close eye, because Erica, I know specific to your point about quantity, here in Massachusetts, as a result of the development of the adult use program, it actually, through the great work of local activist groups, it actually made some indirect changes to the medical program itself. So there are always going to be people in the background through advocacy and activist groups fighting to improve upon your medical program, because unfortunately, it's sometimes the states, those two programs are competing with one another. And there's definitely room for both to coexist. But we want to make sure that one isn't kind of tampered or hampered by the other. So definitely engage your local activist groups to make sure that they're staying in tune with what's happening with the adult use legislation as it's being rolled out, because it's a matter of really just coming to understand the program itself. So again, don't put the cart before the horse. Don't give up on your medical card. If you are in a position where you're considering cannabis as a treatment option, but you haven't yet engaged the services of CannaCare Docs, give us a call. We're happy to talk to you and really help guide you through the process to be able to make a better decision for yourself. Again, it was years before Massachusetts had any adult use shops open for those just looking on the adult use recreational level to be able to purchase and consume their cannabis. So it's really important that you kind of take a pause and step back and really just follow the regulations as they're unfolding, because again, they're just going to be starting in their development phases now. So just keep a local eye out.
Definitely.
I had one more question for Christy. What happened, because I know Massachusetts dealt with a portion of patients who said, I'm not going to get my card. It's going to be adult use. And I know that we really did try to emphasize a lot of these things as well, because we stay on top of it. What happened to those patients? Like, what sort of difficulties did they experience trying to get back into the program?
Not many difficulties at all. If you're already a patient in the state of Massachusetts and you let your card lapse, it's really easy to come back and see us, get your card recertified, and get registered with the state. So we can actually do it in one day. So awesome. There's really no patient waiting or anything. We have had a few people call just because they're concerned with the uncertain future of adult use being shut down again. We know we're spiking in cases of COVID all over the country, and it is up to each state's governor to decide what they're going to do. And as we know, our governor said yesterday, 9:30 is the cutoff time. So it doesn't mean that in 2 weeks he says 7:30 is the cutoff time, or let's stop adult use for the next few weeks and try to cut down on this COVID risk. So the uncertainty of, being able to purchase is huge. And in today's times, we also have delivery in the state of Massachusetts. So the people who are very unsure of going out, they can still, get their medication supplied to them without going out of the house. So that's a huge benefit here in Massachusetts.
That's right. I do want to elaborate a little bit. Well, yes, the process through CannaCare Docs is certainly very seamless and easy. And again, we're operating in a virtual capacity right now. So you don't have to venture out. You don't have to risk your health, your safety. You can actually have your appointment via telemedicine right from the comfort of your own home. But I do want to touch upon something that at the start of COVID, Erica, you had asked about those patients perhaps that dropped off and they decided they didn't need to be a medical patient anymore. What we did see was when the governor in Massachusetts did shut down the adult use dispensaries, there were a number of patients who were previous patients that suddenly found themselves without access to cannabis. Now, while they might not have been a cannabis patient, an active cannabis patient, perhaps they were still utilizing cannabis for a specific healthcare goal. So now we saw a substantial influx when those adult use dispensaries were shut down. We saw a substantial influx of previous patients who now recognized that was one of the benefits that I lost because I chose not to remain in the medical cannabis program. So again, not at all suggesting that the adult use dispensaries here in Massachusetts are going to be shut down, but they did in the spring. And just this week, they were announced that there is an early closing time for the adult use dispensaries here in Massachusetts. So again, not suggesting writing on the wall, not trying to create a panic or a stir, but if in fact you are utilizing cannabis for medicinal purposes, it's definitely worth a consideration to see if that's a program that you really want to remain in, because there are, again, as we've demonstrated here today, there are some benefits to being in the program as opposed to just being an adult use consumer.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys helping me kind of disseminate this information and give me the information that I need to help our patients in New Jersey understand that there are going to be benefits. And again, kudos to the New Jersey Medical Marijuana Program for making that priority known.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Erica, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. And we certainly wish you the best of luck with the outcome. I know that you hold very strong with advocating for the medical cannabis program. So just happy to have this discussion with you today. Christy, thank you, our Massachusetts veteran here, and being able to kind of explain what happened specific in Massachusetts and how that may or may not relate to other states as they're looking ahead to their votes today. So thank you to the both of you. I certainly want to thank those of our viewers, those of our current patients, anyone who tuned in today, just kind of interested in the topic, who might be wondering, perhaps you're sitting in New Jersey wondering what this could possibly mean if in fact adult use is voted in. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to submit your comments and questions. We will, after the fact, comb through those and get back to answering any of those. So certainly thank you to Eric B. Media, who is responsible for this great studio and the ability to bring Erica in virtually. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate that. And again, just a reminder, today is Election Day. If, in fact, you don't feel like you have a voice, or if you're frustrated with things around you, you do have the ability to affect change by way of your vote. So get out there, get to the polls. There have been many opportunities via mail-in ballots or early voting, but today, if you can, get out there. If you don't have a ride, find someone. A lot of local areas will provide rides if you're a senior citizen or whatnot, but it is really, really important that you exercise this right that you have, because again, all over the world, there are so many countries that just don't allow this freedom to be able to help impact the change within their political communities and within their countries. So definitely take that time, go vote, get your sticker. And again, feel free to populate a picture of yourself. We'd love to see your selfies with your I voted stickers. It's something to be very proud of. So again, get out there and vote. It matters, guys. It really matters. Thanks for tuning in today. Again, thanks, Erica. Thanks, Christy. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.